Good afternoon, everyone, and uh, thank you all for making out time for this session. We would now be starting this session. We have some very esteemed panelists, and some of you have been following our work for quite a while. So I really appreciate your taking out time and being a part of this session. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Chirag Bhandari, and I'm the founder and CEO at Innoble Social Innovations, and I'll be your host for this session. As many of you are already aware that we are doing a series of webinar on a very critical issue of how COVID has impacted education, especially rural education, its various consequences such as learning loss, dropouts, child labor, and several other issues, and what specific measures need to be taken to get education back on track. The topic of today's webinar is aligned to this discussion, where we are looking at role of CSR in recovering learning and building resilient education systems beyond the pandemic. The core intent here again is to, we intend to find ways to make learning more accessible to rural children and develop our education system to be more resilient. Now, as you all know, that as schools reopen across the country, there's a sense of return to normalcy in education. However, this is accompanied by trepidation about the absence of children from classroom for more than about 18 months. And then one narrative is terming it as learning loss for the session and the curriculum missed by the children, and children forgetting to recall many things that they could earlier, and not being able to read, write, calculate. Several reports, UNICEF and other organizations have kind of pointed out to these learning losses, and several countries across the globe are taking specific measures to counter this. In most rural areas, as we all know, across the globe, lack of devices as well as connectivity didn't allow for online education for children. And their connection with teachers was essentially bridged by, in some places through community support, and yet in some other places, uh, it was completely absent. And the overall condition during the pandemic appended uh, the life routines of many children, uh, and these and there were new routines that got created that were largely students being at home or playing in their neighborhoods, or sometimes accompanying their parents for work. And besides this, several students, parents, teachers also have gone through a lot of hardships during the course of the pandemic. Uh, Now, all these experiences would have created uh, some kind of learning opportunities for students, and in some cases would provide them experiences to develop skills such as observation, communication, resource mobilization, comparison, etc. Uh, and we must understand that the children's ability to learn hasn't been hampered by the pandemic. And as they return, it would be important for us to understand that these students, they have built a lot of new learnings, and though these learnings are not really aligned, would be always aligned with the concepts in the textbooks, but these are also really critical learnings. So if we look at learning from a perspective of development of multiple abilities that enable learning, that would allow us to perceive these students and their development in the last 1.5 year from a more holistic standpoint. Uh, and if children haven't had this opportunity to practice certain abilities, or read or write, as they would have done in normal school, they have strengthened some other capabilities at the same time. Now, as we plan for their future learning in the classroom, giving attention to all the aspects would provide new ways to create connections across old and new, and focus on opportunities which strengthen a range of abilities. And while we we have students coming back to classroom, and they might not be able to bring back all that they had memorized earlier, or all that they had learned earlier, as we see, they bring back these amazing new abilities to be able to observe, to be engaged, to be able to engage, to play, to imagine, and to do a lot more. And we need to now really pause, reflect, and see how we need to approach, learning from, how do we need to approach learning from these new standpoints, and also various challenges, uh, the stress that teachers have gone through, the stress that parents have gone through, the stress that children themselves have gone through. How do we create systems where these challenges are mitigated, and we, next time when we have such pandemics, probably we are able to cope much better and have better learning be delivered to these students. So with this, we have certain very special guests among us to kind of share their views and expand on this very, very critical topic. Our first guest uh, for today is Mr. Anurag Pratap. He's Vice President and Head CSR Capgemini India. Mr. Anurag brings with him more than 22 years of diversified experience in CSR, community development, project management, effective implementation, grant management, capacity planning, and resource management. Over the past 2 decades, he has worked with various grassroots organizations, donor group, UN agencies, and corporates. It's genuinely a privilege to have him share his experiences with us here today. Our second guest for the afternoon is Mrs. Ashwini Deshmukh, and she's head CSR at Godrej and Bosch. Ashwini has been spearheading CSR project for the company, including the flagship Pan India employability program, Disha, and community development projects across 9 locations. In her LinkedIn profile, she quotes, "With a dream to realize equitable and sustainable growth, embarked on a mission to promote strategic CSR for creating shared value, integrating corporate processes and social and environmental processes, and creating a win-win relationship." It's absolutely a privilege, Ashwini, to have you here with us. Uh, and finally, Mr. Prasun Kumar, most of you who have been attending our sessions regularly know him. He's one of our mentors. He's a seasoned academic professional. Mr. Prasun Kumar is currently serving as an education consultant with Vidyabhavan Society. He has been closely associated with various state and national school education improvement programs, textbook writing, teacher training, and policy and curriculum development. He believes learning means applying a rationale to create and choose, with no liberty to choose and no option to select from, no sensible reason exists, and no learning occurs. So, without further ado, I would like to begin the session, and I would like Mr. Anurag Pratap to be the first speaker for the evening. Uh, and, and, and Anurag, just to support you and facilitate you, maybe I could have Prasun sir just very quickly create his context so that so that all of Anurag and Ashwini both are facilitated in this conversation. So Prasun sir, if you could just create quick context for both of them, please.
Yeah. So hello everybody. So let me just quickly go through. I'll take 2 minutes just to give you how we evolved from first webinar, which we started in April 2021, and today's webinar. So basically, when we started webinar, we had a very narrow understanding of what we are looking at. We started with trying to understand how best we can organize learning in the post-COVID situation. Then it was a very general idea. Then we moved to get experts' view on about different subjects. So we called people with mathematics background, language, science, and they gave us some response to why what we get to see in the COVID times, particularly children's learning, and what we need to do beyond COVID. And then And so that was very narrow way of looking at post-COVID situation. Then we also we kept on talking to people and experts and also teachers, students, parents, trying to understand what else we can do. Then we realized that it's COVID, post-COVID is not only about student, it's also about teachers, it's also about parents. And we realize that teachers are heterogeneous group, and many teachers, they were thrown out of the school, they lost their jobs, some had to go through salary cuts, है ना? And even they were also publicly shamed on social media, saying that they are taking salary without teaching. Then in the elite school, I got to know that parents were very nasty with teachers, trying to tell them that whatever pronunciation they were using was not the prescribed pronunciation. You know? So they were also stressed, and so do parents because of economic slowdown. Many parents lost their job. You know? So this is so. Then we, at this point of time, we are able to understand that if you want to make any change in the post-COVID situation in the schools, you have to look at the ecosystem of learning, including all the three major components: student, teachers, and parents. Then only you can address. So this is where we have reached, and maybe from today's discussion and beyond this, we'll be able to add more understanding on what else can be done. So thank you very much, Chirag. So back to you.
Thanks. Thank you, Prasun sir, for setting up this context wonderfully. And with that, I would like to invite our guest speaker for the afternoon, Mr. Anurag Pratap. Over to you.
Okay. This is no rocket science in today's space where kids since I'll say March 2020 or April 2020, they're not having, I'll say, the kind of education that they should be getting. And I completely agree with Chirag when he said that education doesn't mean only textbook, but education, people or the kids have acquired new skill set. I completely am in sync with that particular thing. But we need to be also be aware of the fact that end of the day, these kids are going to get measured on the same yardstick that will be used to measure other kids. And the worst impacted lot among this group is the kids who are studying in rural setting, kids who are studying in government school setting, kids who are coming from socially marginally, socially excluded, economically challenged, socially very marginalized, stigmatized communities there, because they suddenly realize that the whole comfort of the school classroom was taken away from them. The whole comfort of someone providing them with the input was taken away from them. And though there were attempts made by many people, including us also, to bring in what is called the edtech to these kids, but the problem is that you don't have instrument at each of these kids level. They are not as lucky as our kids who are spoiled with choices. You have tabs, you have computer, you have laptop, you have desktop, you have smartphones, and they are deciding that, hey, today I'll do it on iPhone, tomorrow I'll do it on OnePlus, and the day after tomorrow I'll do it on Lenovo or Dell. I have not taken any money from either of them, but I'm endorsing them, so that's okay. But I took all these brands made a huge stride there in 2020, 2021, but it failed to reach out to the socially economically group there. There are some studies which said that 68% of these kids had either no mean or had one mean to what is called receive the content. So you are grappling with that particular reality there, where the access became a major issue there, and we made a huge amount of loud noises saying that, hey, we have done this, we have done that, we have created this, we have created the other edtech revolution during this particular period, but 68% are not. We are not reaching out to them, or we fail to reach out. That's one. The second is the whole teaching community. Though they are now back in the digital space, but imagine someone who is not at all comfortable with digital, someone who's not very comfortable with webinar, Zoom calls. Suddenly, they were literally forced to come online. There was a huge amount of discomfort, a huge amount of, I'll say, de-learning and relearning happened with, with that particular teaching community. And I salute all of them. I have a huge amount of, I'll say, gratitude for the teaching community because, and I'm talking about government school teachers. I'm not talking about any other teacher because I primarily work with them only. And the way they de-learned concept and relearn the concept, hats off to them. It was not easy. They were also grappling with their own challenges there. The third challenge was the whole edtech market, which was more attuned to the, I'd say, middle class to higher class category who were giving them the revenues. So their stimulation of the content design or content placement, or the language in which the content was ready was purely dependent on where the market is. So market has started dictating the education rather than the social welfare orientation, which was earlier deciding the education and education content and curriculum. There were, and I'm not saying that all was wrong. There was a number of silver lining in this particular phase. So there were people use WhatsApp as an excellent platform to bring in learning there. And I'm not going to talk about the work that Capgemini has done because this is not about Capgemini, but this is more about what the work that has happened in this particular space. So I may have done it, but I'm not going to use Capgemini to say that, hey, this is what we did. There were people who came out with WhatsApp as a platform because they suddenly realized that a huge amount of Indian population have WhatsApp connectivity there. And they have I'll say their own WhatsApp number, as they call it, and people use that to provide early childhood education, which was primarily for Anganwadi kids, and they brought in the same amount of, I'll say, user experience by bringing in parents, asking parents to click a photograph of their kids and post it there to show how they are doing their homework, which in the sense motivated the other kids and other parents. There was a huge amount of work that happened in running the, I'll say, basic digital project with these kids. I've seen projects where kids have used WhatsApp for STEM education. Kids have used WhatsApp to do STEM projects and showcased it. I've seen teachers using WebEx to showcase the project, participate in robotic competition, participate in number of other STEM competition there. So there is huge amount of, I'll say, best practices which happen in bits and pieces. What is needed right now is to combine them together to go in there. What Chirag, you rightly pointed out that 18 months are lost. Let's face it that you'll be grappling with some of the kids who have gone back to where they started. So the next I'll say 6 months should be a mix of high intensity workshop with them with regular curriculum there so that you can help them pace up with some of the things that they have lost out completely there. And with a virus playing different game with us, coming out with newer version after every 2 months, as if virus has a mobile company now, where the mobile company comes out with Pro Max and version 2, version 8, version 9, version 11. Similarly, this particular virus is also coming out newer version every 3 months, every 4 months. I'm not very sure how this is going to pan out, but I'll say community learning center, digitally enabled, Wi-Fi enabled, with number of computers there, with certainly and making it tech, I'll say something which is open source in so many ways, and you can't control content by saying that hey, this is which is going to be revenue-based content there. There and even number of, I'll say, smart classroom providers. I know few of you are around. I know few of you because we have worked together. You'll have to make some of your content open source to really be in the market. Otherwise, the market is going to look at how responsible the content creators are also. Thank you. This is my initial submission. And if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Anurag. Thanks for this. Thanks for sharing a lot of work that you have. Indirectly sharing some work that you have already done during the pandemic, and how you see as some of the challenges, and also how your specific comment on teaching community and what really has happened with them. I think there would be some question. In fact, even I have some questions, but maybe I'll get Ashwini in now, and we can have her sharing her ideas on this topic, and then we can dedicate about 20 minutes to questions and answers post that. So Ashwini, over to you.
So good evening to all. Am I audible?
Yes, very much, loud and clear.
Yeah. So it's a pleasure to be meeting all you people in education sector. So here, my take on the situation now is basically, see, at Godrej, a substantial part of our CSR budget is invested in the area of education. And before the pandemic also, we tried to see that basically the investment is done in such a way that a good chunk of money is also spent on the learning outcome related projects. So we would be having projects related to infrastructure, improving toilets or improving classrooms, but we would be also having outcome related projects like English, special English teaching, experiential learning classes, focus on new training techniques for teachers. So come pandemic, I think the whole equation changed, where our focus was more on like the experiential learning and how the outcome can be improved by techniques like different Bala techniques, or how the classrooms could be used as a different way of teaching, and more of interaction between the students and the physical interaction between the students and the teachers. So we grappled with this fact as basically now the equation is different. So how do we really make an impact in this? So the first 6 months of the pandemic, we basically spent on really supporting the schools in terms of the midday meals, so as to see that their programs continue and the benefits which was coming to the students through various government programs and all, how we can augment and see a continuity for it. I would say the learning outcome challenge was that time also envisaged, and it became more pronounced once the lockdown kept on increasing, and we could see that this scenario is not really going to improve very soon. So we started working with the schools in terms of how do you ensure connectivity of education. So that is one of our major community outreach or COVID outreach program, in which we are trying to work out with schools in our region as how do we ensure that there is a education continuity. So the continuity is in the two aspects. One is students having a digital divide. How do we see that at least some amount of content reaches to them and they are on par with the other students? Secondly is the continuity is in terms of how much is the learning outcome continuing. So can we really ensure some amount of it? We were very clear that it's not going to be the same, but at least there should be a continuity and there should not be a break in this. So few projects we have taken up. One thing, as I think even the earlier speaker also spoke about community centers. So in our villages, we have taken up an extended learning center, wherein students who did not have the digital access, we provided a classroom which was enabled with all the contents. These were connected with the schools in the region, so that whatever classes were being taken, or the content which was delivered to the other students on mobile and all, this was delivered to the community center, extended learning center, and through which it was then reaching to these students who were at remote locations and did not have an access to computers at home. I would say this program worked very well only because of very good support by the local community mobilizers. So there were quite a few people who had returned back to their villages because of the lockdown condition. And these youth really volunteered to help out the community in this requirement. And we had a very good dedicated community volunteers who helped us to ensure that the center really works to the optimum level. So the center also as such had a challenge because it had to cater to various classrooms. The scheduling and all was really worked out very wonderfully by the students and by the schools and the community volunteers. And to an extent, we could ensure that there is a continuous flow of education content to these students. So this is one model. In fact, it's not a COVID idea, but this was also an idea we were going to work out with, because we have a lot of tribal students in our region, and to them, there is always a continuity gap when it comes to monsoons, because it becomes quite difficult for them to reach to the schools during this region. So this project we saw as a very good alternative, or a additional means which could ensure that these students, even in normal times, could get a continued educational exposure. Second project which we were thinking of is basically how do we see that the learning loss which the students have gone through for the last 1.5 years, so how it can be augmented with, say, additional support. So we were looking at ideas like how you can have a read aloud classroom, so wherein the learning was facilitated at the community level by the mobilizers, and this would be really more of reading and ensuring that the content which is reiterated not just on mobile but in physical way also. So sort of creating small extended learning centers. These were very small ones which could be created. So these are some, I would say, basic ideas. I don't see a very how it could help much in the long term, but we do have a idea that it's not something which we can just take up for a year. This is, if we have to cover this learning gap and ensure some good results, we need to continue with these small steps, depending upon the area requirement, for around 2 to 3 years minimum, to see that we reach to a good outcome level. So these are some challenges we are seeing. Now we have started again working back with the students, because working back with the schools, because we see this phenomena is not going to stop. So come a new variant, again there is a lot of concern as whether the school can run full strength. So this phenomena of on and off, we envisage that would continue for around 4 to 5 years till the things are stable. Maybe it becomes a new norm also. So we are now already working with the schools to see as how the hybrid model of some learning on digital medium, some learning on physical classrooms, how it can be made as a regular way of learning, and how do we ensure that the digital divide which is there for students from a lower background can be addressed with some community interventions, with some CSR interventions, so as to see that there is a better continuity of education for all and all students. So these are some of my takes on the challenge which the pandemic has posed in the during this time.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwini. I think you've covered a lot of ground when you shared as to what you have done and what really some of the things that have worked, and also I think very interesting point that you have a view that this might just continue for some time, 4 to 5 to 6 years, and then we need to look at hybrid model. A lot of people are calling this a phygital model, which is physical and digital combined kind of a model that we need to look at ensure connectivity and continuity of students. So I would like to quickly get in Prasoon sir here, and if he can also share very quickly, his first reactions to or if he has any questions that he would like to pose, Prasoon sir.
Yeah, so one thing which is common between both speakers is basically they are talking of the digital divide that exists. And since we also have school, so that was a problem and children who have been part of, not secluded just because they don't have digital access, I think we'll have to rethink how much they have learned, because by not going to school, they have also lost the learning community. And what Anurag ji said, I agree that now it has become more market driven. Education has become more market driven. Earlier also it was market driven. When you talk of teaching coding, it is market driven, because lots of studies have been done. Lots of people have written about American experiment with coding for all program, and we have not learned from that. And so one thing which is for both speaker is, can you pick up one or two issues which you can think from your own experience working in the program can be a learning for other organization and can be scaled up? So that's my area of interest, and that's what I'm looking for. So one or two intervention which you can say, yeah, this is our learning and this is possible to scale up and you all can do it. So Anurag and Ashwini, this is my question. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. From my experience, I basically feel a lot of things could be done in terms of, firstly is creating content. I think when Anurag ji maintained as it is market driven, it was more on the content part of it, as how do you make, earlier, if you see, the education was more of a social, or rather it is still a social issue, and then basically the way we develop content and all is basically being more inclusive. So when it comes to market driven, I think we need to see that the social angle of it is also maintained. So from my experience, I feel that a lot of things which have really worked for us is basically working more on the content and giving that material, that support or teaching aid, learning aid to teachers in a generic manner would something which each corporate could take up a bit and work on. It could be working on mediums, like, because not all the teachers are very tech savvy. So how do you enable them to deliver these in the hybrid model? Because as we move to the hybrid model, most of the teachers would be expected to become adept in this kind of teaching also. So how do you enable and give them the tools so that each and every teacher could perform to the optimum level? That is something definitely CSR teams could work on. Second is the area of extended learning centers, because there is always a scope that there's always a set of people who are going to face the digital challenge. It may so happen that the house has just one laptop or one mobile on which there are 3 children studying. So even if the reach is there, still the access is limited. So how can we really work on these centers who can really take on that load of extra of the digital divide is the second area where the corporates can intervene. And the third area is, I think, what we should be doing is being patient. with the programs. So always we do have a tendency of a 1 year timeline or 2 year timelines. But when it comes to this loss or this thing, I think we need to be patient and really invest in some smaller programs which are more softer in nature. How do we see that, and how do we help with additional programs like the Read Aloud program, or help in terms of mathematics, not coding, but in a basic understanding of better math skills is something which we should really invest on and provide that additional support to the school, so that the backlog which is there can be filled to some extent. So these are 3 areas I feel we have worked on, and these are giving good results, and something which the other corporates or other agencies can also explore.
In my opinion, I guess there is huge amount of content available. Don't put your money in content development. The system is full of content. Go to type anything. The government has invested hugely in content development. Those content are there. So my take, no need on that. What is needed right now is that putting your money in bringing in teachers being ready for the new learning and the pedagogy that it comes in with that. That's something which is needed there in a very, very, I'll say, structured manner. And there has to be some structure to the madness. That's what I feel. The days of Ashwini, the days of small is beautiful is over. You need to have a scale there now. And that's where my take is that the intervention should have a scale where you can bring in the change and let the government also feel that hey, this is the way one should be doing it. Because the days of, I'll say, coming out with island of prosperity, island of transformation, island of change is over now. And unfortunately, poor are getting not their due share when we give them saying that, hey, this is the small world that I've created. You have everything there, but outside this particular small world, the poor remain poor. And I've been saying this in every place that education today or skilling today should be a tool to break the cycle of poverty. It should be a tool to bring in the whole essence of why I am here, where I am today. It should be a tool to make you feel empowered to ask relevant questions there. And for that particular thing, the blended is the only way to move forward. Blended is the only way to fill that gap which is already there in this particular space, and there build the capacities of teachers. And third is, which is the most important one, which is the most difficult one, is bringing the collaboration with stakeholders there. This particular sector is a unique sector where everyone feels that we are doing the pioneering work without being able to respect or recognize the work being done by others. There's a need to make people come together and collaborate together, because there is beauty of work being done by X, there is beauty of work done by Z, there is huge amount of impactful one done by A, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, they need to come together to collaborate, because you can't be present in Jammu Kashmir also and be present in Kerala also. You can't be present in Maharashtra also and be present in Nagaland also. And there's a need to create a strong movement on education there, which looks at pedagogy, which looks at content, which looks at delivery, which looks at platform, which looks at a aggregator model where different content pedagogy can be placed in one particular space and anyone can pick and use it. And the way Airbnb is used, or the way I'll say Amazon is being used, or the way I'll say Uber is being used, where let everyone place their content to one particular platform and use that platform. I guess that's where we are losing out this particular battle, because the battle is becoming my battle. Chirag. The battle is all about Chirag. The battle is all about Anurag. Battle is all about Prasoon. Battle is not about the kids who are there who's willing to study. Battle is not about the teachers who are willing to make people study. The moment the battle becomes of kids and the teachers, the whole thing will change drastically. And that's where my take in most of these seminars and most of these webinars is that it's not about you. It's more about these kids who are looking for the solution that they are asking for today. Prasunji, did I say anything wrong where you feel that you need to correct me? And that's where I saw your hand going up.
No, nothing. So I just wanted to just whatever you have said, Anurag and Ashwini, just wanted to make it make it a one piece of statement. So basically, both of you listening to both of you, we need to think about what Brunner said: getting rid of folk pedagogy, the pedagogy of telling, where you believe that there is a learner and there is somebody who has all the knowledge, and you need to just transfer the knowledge. So that only will lead to what Anurag you are saying, to decentralize learning and decentralize. And it's also about understanding. So if I get your point right, also about understanding that knowledge is also cultural embedded. It is embedded by culture. So you can't have a universal formula for reaching out to all with fit all size formula will not work in education. You need to decentralize, and you have to understand that there is a culture, and you have to address to that culture before you reach the knowledge. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to add.
Unfortunately, culture is not the form on the basis of which they are going to get measured. At class 10th examination, culture is not going to come into picture. They are going to get measured equally on their proficiency on the subject matter. That's what I've been saying all around, Prasunji, that I completely agree with the need to bring in culture at the center, value at the center of the education. But you need to, unfortunately, get mainstream with the kind of mainstream that people have defined today. The question can be, and anyone can ask, and I'm the one who will ask this particular, who asks this question all the time, that whose stream is the main. But
yeah,
unfortunately, there is a mainstream there, no?
Mainstream is there, Anurag. I'm saying that there are cultural nuances that you have to address. So both of us come from Bihar. We know the difference between hum and main.
No, agreed. I agree with that.
So that nuances you need to address.
I agree, but usi nuance ke andar mein, one need to also understand that physics ke andar mein, I need to answer the law of motion in the same way that Dhirubhai Ambani International School kids are answering that. And I need to prepare my kids to answer that law of motion in that particular manner itself. Then only they can get the marks. Because end of the day, college ke andar admission mein, no one is going to say that you studied from a government school, hence you will be what is called compensated by 20% marks, and the other kids can get admission by higher marks there. End of the day, we are competing. This is a competitive world. End of the day.
I am totally with you, Anurag ji. The only my response is that before you reach the ultimate understanding of conclusion, the path of reaching that conclusion can be different. So I want to learn physics, but before I get to know the real theory of physics, I need to get interested in it. And that's how where the cultural has an importance.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Chirag. Now
but ये सारे बंदिशें गरीब के बच्चों पर क्यों आती है? Why all these bandish is not on people who are studying in international schools and the better schools there?
नहीं, Anurag ji, so
the reason why I'm asking is कि culture का
I'll give you I will give you one example. I will give you one example.
Yeah, sure.
तो जो बच्चे जो इंटरनेशनल स्कूल में पढ़ते हैं, उन बच्चों से जाके आप पूछिए कि 0.20 और 0.202 को में क्या अंतर है, थोड़ा बता दें. या when you divide two half, it becomes 1. Can you explain that? And no mathematics can be without logic. So I'm talking of a different, what you are talking about is the physics of understanding. I'm also talking about mathematics of understanding. That hardly children, whether they are studying in international school or whether they are studying in 5-star school, most of them, they don't have.
I completely agree. I have no problem with this product understanding. The only problem that I have with, and this is understanding that I have, this is a problem that I have in this particular space. And I'll give you a small one. Everyone talked about national policy on tribal development. The moment we start talking about tribal policy on national development, world will change. I come from that school of thought. But my problem always is that why people are socially excluded, economically challenged, marginalized, stigmatized, have to carry the weight of culture, values, everything that the world has to bring there. Why all these discourses do not happen in the school? My take to my project, my team is very clear that end of the day, I want to look at these kids as a kid who outperform others there. I want to win. I don't want to participate just for the sake of participation there. And that's what I am looking at these kids there. I want these kids to join Capgemini on their own merit. I want these kids to get to engineering college. I want these kids to get into medical college. I don't want these kids to only talk about values and culture because others are not talking about values and culture there. That's where I rest my case. I'm not going to get into
carry this discussion further. So my culture is value neutral. Huh? I'm not
I
talking
agree.
Of a culture which we keep hearing these days. I'm not talking of that culture. I'm talking of a culture which is value neutral. 10 people can make a culture and 10 people can have their own understanding of a particular knowledge. So that I'm talking of that.
Yeah. And maybe in my initial remark, like I mentioned, we need to have an education which is competency based. So I think if we are aligned, and in many cases, like Prasun Sir was highlighting, and in so many ways, Anurag, you also pointed out, the education that we are really pushing for right now, because it is assessed by a certain amount of marks. So then that's the push. So, but if we change what we measure, and if we are really measuring competencies, then that can be a real game changer. And I think in so many ways, NEP 2020 provides for that, but the implementation of it remains to be seen. If we can have a change there, a shift there, then we can really see some real changes happening in the education system. And here I would like to have Ashwini come in on comment on this. Anything from your side, Ashwini?
Yeah, quite an interesting debate. So my take on this was, see, basically the concept of values. Yeah, I totally agree that when the students be at international schools, these are both of them would be measured on the same yardstick. So our overall intention of any program is to see that how do we make a level ground so that the kids from the rural also get a similar kind of exposure, get a similar kind of opportunity so as to compete. So basically, I think the whole intervention is going to continue on this same lines as how do we create a level playing ground. And I think the only thing is the pandemic has added that complexity as how do we do it. So earlier, the thought was basically as the students did not have an access for more of experiential learning, provide that. Second was the exposure to newer concepts, provide that. So I guess this work on what is the gap and continue to work on that gap will continue. It's only thing that the dimension of the distance, the physical and the digital has really added that challenge. And I'm sure all in the education sector, be the government or this thing, are keenly looking at what all initiatives can be taken on this line, and new concepts would definitely emerge. One thing I really agree with Anurag ji is really we should not be reinventing the wheel. There are quite a few people who are doing really good work in this area, and our endeavor is also to not really create a program of our own, but we are looking at models as which have really worked. And these are some things which we could just take up and scale up is something which we are looking forward to do in the next 3 to 4 years, and focus more on that rather than just the physical infrastructure in schools.
All right, Ashwini. And when you spoke about digital and phygital plus digital, I just remembered. So I've been traveling extensively over the past 2-3 weeks. Went to Orissa, went to Patna, went to Andhra Pradesh, and you'd be surprised how government is also taking a lot of initiative to bring in, the phygital ideas in and getting teachers and the infrastructure in place. So a lot of high schools getting transformed in Orissa. Government has set aside budgets, and a lot of the district magistrates are being driven to actually have this phygital infrastructure in place. Likewise in Andhra, likewise in Patna. There's a shift in the, in the overall environment or in the overall policy making process also, as to how people are now looking at education. So I think very, very relevant ideas being discussed, and and to see them on ground also is very, very exciting. Uh, my final bit, if you were to, because this entire discussion is to kind of collate ideas as to how we build resilient education system. How do we have not have breakdowns happening as bad as we had this time? And obviously digital is one bit, and but we can't overdo digital because there are consequences to that too. So your final thoughts on how we can have uh, a resilient system. What are the 3, 4, 5 points that that we should look into before or while we are looking at building a resilient education system for the future?
Anuragji, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. There are 2, 3 things. One is that our somewhere we need to make our education much more dynamic than the way it is. For example, you talked about Chirag NEP. NEP took 20 years to come. And we were taught by teachers who always had the yellow colored notes there because they became old and obsolete. And so I'm not talking about only the primary education, but I'm talking about the whole education space there. We are obsolete with art, and we are legacy-driven society. We only talk about what we have done in the past. We don't look into future, and we are not future-oriented in that process. We look at how we can become ready for the future. That's the first take, where make education as dynamic as any other field is. Let the revision of content or revisiting content or the curriculum should be, I'll say, a normal process rather than a process which is not influenced by your political or religious orientation, but a process which is purely is scientific in nature, and that's the temperament that you bring in there. Invest on teachers training. There's a huge amount of need to invest on teachers training, which unfortunately is not happening. With the annual budget of around 300 rupees per teacher per year, you can't build the kind of teacher that you're seeking for the making education or making learning become future oriented in that particular sense. Third is that Ashwini said this earlier also, have the patience for change in this particular space. Education is high gestation period investment. This is an investment where you don't get result within 1 year or 2 years. You need to be ready for, if you really want to change the generation thinking and learning, then you should be ready for, I'll say, longest period of support there. You will not find many corporate today who is willing to do multi-year funding there. I know corporate who will only do annual funding there, and that's where I have a huge issue with them. That's the fourth one, and the which I've said earlier also, that there is a need to collaborate together. You can't, no one can achieve things there. Fifth is that, and this is for all the CSR head there who may be listening to or who may listen to, stop finding sustainability in education program. Everywhere you can't find sustainability there. You may find sustainability in a number of other projects there, but leave your primary education thing from the whole angle of when this can become sustainable. No, it won't become sustainable. This will require some amount of external support all perpetually there. So that's a message that I want to give it to other people, and the message to the NGOs who are involved in this particular work. there's a value in what Prasunji was saying, that yes, culture is important, and how we can bring in that particular thing and integrate with the mainstream learning there. That's the job that the NGOs can play usually there. That's where I'll say the role of NGOs become very important. Where, for example, when I'm working with kids of commercial sex workers, or when I'm working with kids who are traffic rescue now in observation home, or kids who are having multiple disability, or kids who are with HIV identity, I know there is a need to unpack their cultural realities also. I need to, what is called, make them feel uh, uh, not destigmatized of their realities, but feel proud of where they are. And that is the role that we all can play. And the moment that happens, learning becomes a lot more easier there. Yeah. These are some of my initial thought on how we can uh, uh, prepare ourselves to fight some of these battles which will come in there. Be ready, folks. This COVID is not going very soon. This is there for us for longer haul. It has come well prepared with almonds and with dry fruits and everything to keep them alive, kicking there. And there will be other situations also in future. So we need to find ways to manage the learning levels there. And the last one, and this is which is more policy driven. Government came out with e-waste policy, but they failed to mention the e-donation there in that particular ambit. Many corporates are using that particular policy to say that, hey, I'm not going to donate my used computer because I'll get into a huge amount of trouble there, because liability of managing e-waste will lie with me. So we need to somewhere reorient or re-identify a policy also, because digital infrastructure access is huge challenge there. With this, I rest my case. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, Ashwini, would you like to add to this?
So I think with the nice 10, 12 points which with Anurag ji gave, so you people have a lot of food for thought. So let me put in my 2 bit also. What I also agree is basically we need to be prepared for a quick change, because the thing is, as we said, that nothing is everlasting here. And with the scenario changing in terms of even the way the world is changing, I think the education policy also and the education system also needs to be more flexible. And the thought on how we can enable that flexibility is something which we should work on. So in education also, how each and every CSR program could ensure that the flexibility is there rather than the sustainability part of it. How it can ramp up to the newer requirements is something which definitely we can work on. And second area I felt was the thing is really keeping the teachers and the students more at the focus of how the programs are designed, rather than focusing on the policy part of it. I think most of you would be looking at something which is a large scale intervention role, but yet there is merit in really working on smaller pilots and trying to see that the new innovations in education could be tried out and then pitched to others. So I think all the guys need to keep on innovating and sharing, so that more and more things could evolve, and more and more we could be ahead of the curve when it comes to education.
Thanks, Ashwini. And with that, Prasun sir, parting notes from your side, top 3, 4, 5 points.
So I don't have much to say. And Anurag, my daughter will be really happy if she hears you saying that the COVID is going to stay. That's what she is waiting for in her boarding school. She wants that COVID to restart, and so that she is back home and she's studying online. Anyway, so one thing, important point that I want to make is change the way you ask question, and everything will get leveled. For example, just to elaborate what I'm saying, instead of asking children, giving them grammar or some question like this, ask them small question, like give them chair and tell them that please let us know when a chair becomes Bob and when a chair becomes round. So that is the greatest leveler of education. So we are so much memory-based education. We are so much obsessed with testing our memory. That's the reason why you find the difference between international school and national school and government school. So that's where I want to end, Chirag. So yeah, and we'll continue this discussion, Anurag and Ashwini, at some point of time. And great talking to both of you and listening to you. And I hope that some discussion continues between Inobil, Vidya Bhavan, and both the organization you both represent. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And it's actually been a very, very insightful session. I've made about 4.5 pages of notes. So I was trying to sum up the entire thing in under 1 minute, and I was looking at so many incredible points that have been covered. I think the most important points that stand out is that I think both of you have suggested patience and long-term commitment towards education, and really investing in children and in teachers and their development. I think that is one very, very key point that stood out. And obviously, the fact that we are looking to really work in this space with a lot of patience, and we need to have digital infrastructure for teachers and for students to participate. And we need to all, I think one very, very critical piece which did not get the kind of highlight that it must have gotten, I think collaboration that Anurag suggested. I think incredible work being done by so many organizations, but in pockets. I think if we can really bring collaboration to forefront, a lot of problems can be addressed in very different and speedy ways. I think finally, in so many points, I think what we'll do is that we'll create a note of all the learning that has been derived as a part of this webinar. And we'll be sharing this note with all the participants so that you can have access to all of this learning and you can share your inputs back with us. And the point at which we initially started, competency-based learning, I think we all agree. And competency-based learning and competency-based testing of our students, I think that is one single thing which can bring a radical shift in our education system and make our entire education structure more resilient. So with that note, I would like to thank you all for taking out time. Anurag, Ashwini, Prasoon, thank you so much for being here. It was insightful and scintillating to hear your views. And thank you everyone, all the guests. And I would like to thank Inobil team. We're a very young team, and everyone has put in a lot of work to piece this webinar together. So special thanks to the entire Inobil team. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chirag.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chirag. Thank you, Prasoonji. We'll certainly get in touch, and we need to have these kind of discussions.
Yeah. Thank you, Anurag. Thank you, Ashwini.
Thank you, Ashwini. It's always refreshing hearing you. It's always good to have people around you in this larger ecosystem. Thank you.
Sure, sir. We'll catch up someday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.